Today we have to do the code for one-to-one association mapping. So first let's create the customer and address classes. Let's close everything. Okay, save. Just create the project, Java project. Suppose this is code 6 one-to-one association mapping. One-to-one association mapping, in which we have to create customer and address relationship. Customer. In our customer, let's say we have some fields, properties, you can say. Those properties are PID, private, string, name, private, string, city, private, long, phone. And another we have another class is address. So these we are making persistence class. What is persistent class? Class in which there is a unique identifiable field. So for PID we are going to provide primary key on top of this, so it becomes uniquely identifiable. So the customer will become persistent class. If there is no uniquely identifiable field in this class, then we cannot say that customer is persistence class. In address, suppose we have, so let's don't provide city right here. City have to be in address. And what else? Suppose pin code is going to be of type int. Suppose country, COUNTRY, country is also going to be of type string. So how to make relationship between two classes? What we have to do, we have to mention address right here. Private address so it become relationship between address. If we are going to use customer, then we can, by the help of customer object, we can provide values inside the address. I know you know the Java, that's why you are learning Hibernate, so you have to be aware of these things. Let's create the constructor. So in the Hibernate you always have to have one default constructor. That is the best practice. One default constructor, then let's say constructor without PID, because it is going to be given by the Hibernate. One getter and setter method. Let's make this class persistence class. So to create the table of this class, we have to mark it as entity. Okay, we have to build first jar file, so we can use these annotations. Just go in project. I'm going to provide these jars in the link below in description, so you can just download it from there. Select all, open, apply, apply and close. Right here, everything got built. Every jar file is here now. Let's try that. So here is the entity. Then we have to write table annotation. Table name is going to be customer, and for this CID we want to make it primary key. So by ID it becomes primary key. Now we have to tell Hibernate that Hibernate have to give the values for the primary key column by itself. For that we have to use this generated value tag strategy generation type is going to be auto. And if we are not going to provide this column field, you know what is going to happen. Hibernate will create the corresponding column with this CID name. If we want some another names, then we have to provide right here. Suppose only ID, then corresponding column for CID as it is that is going to get created is going to be with name ID. So we don't want ID right now, we want CID. Let's copy and paste it real quick. Phone, and for address, let's do address in later parts. First, let's make address resistant class. So also give this annotation entity right here, make it table with the name address, and for the city you have to give one primary key private in suppose AID ID, and Hibernate have to provide values for this by itself. So strategy is going to be generation type auto, and let's provide column name which is going to be of AID. For city field we will create column city. For pin code we will create pin code. For country we will create country. Let's create one constructor, default constructor first. Then some parameterized constructor without AID which is of primary key, getter and setters. Now it is time to make the relationship between these two persistence class association mapping one-to-one relationship. For that, on the address field you have to write 1, 2, 1, and then you have to join the columns. Join column name is going to be my address. Reference column name is going to be add id. So in this line what we are doing is, you can understand that on diagram, suppose we have customer table. We have customer table and we have address table right here. So we have to make relationship between these two, in which customer is going to have address, customer has address, and address is also going to belong to one customer. So what we have to do, we have to establish foreign key relationship between these two tables. This is the table of customer, this is the table of address. So suppose here is CID, we have CNAME, and we are going to have suppose phone, and in this side we have add ID, we have city, we have pin code. So in this case we have to establish foreign key relationship in between customer and address. So what we are going to do is, we are going to create one column right here, suppose with name myCID. And on this side we are going to create another column, and on this side we have the primary key add ID. So what going to do, we are going to establish the relationship between the primary key of address table, which is add ID, and this column myCID. We have CID, CNAME, and phone number table in customer table, and we have add ID, city, pin code column in address table. So what we are going to do, we are going to insert one new table myCID in the customer table. We make one new column myCID in customer table, and we establish a relationship, foreign key relationship, with the add ID primary key of address table. So suppose there is one customer and we have second customer. So one address is always going to belong to one customer. So address is going to have multiple values like city, pin code. So whenever we are going to insert the customer and its corresponding address, then for the customers 1, this address in this row is going to be get in the relationship with this. Suppose we have customer 2. When we want the address for customer 2, then we are going to use customer.setAddress. Here you can see we have address and we have setter method. So when we are going to write customer object dot setter method, then we can provide the corresponding address. So for customer 2, we can provide address of that second customer. So what is happening here? In one-to-one relationship, one customer is going to have only one address, and one address, suppose address 2, is always going to belong to one customer. The address second is not going to belong to customer 1 and 2 both. From both sides, it is one-to-one relation. How to make the relationship? We are going to insert one column in our customer table, and with the help of that column, we are going to establish foreign key relationship with the column of address table. So what we have to do here? What we already did here is one-to-one relationship on top of address, and then we are using join column annotation, in which we have mentioned new column name. So my add is going to be new column. So at the place of my CID, suppose there is my add represent my address, and which is referencing reference column is add ID. Where is add ID? Add ID is inside address table. Add ID. It is not add ID, it is AID. So we have to write here AID. So this line is establishing foreign key relationship between the column my add, which is going to be inside customer table my add, and between the column AID, and this AID column is inside address table AID here AID. So with the foreign key relationship, both the entity class, or you can say persistence class, will fall into a relationship. Let's do another code. So right here, before doing client code, we have to make Hibernate configuration document and Hibernate mapping document. But for Hibernate mapping document, we already use annotations. So for Hibernate configuration document, let's copy it from the previous examples. Let me copy it. Here we got, move it into the SRC. And in Hibernate configuration document, open it with, we have to initialize two classes. One is the customer, another one is address. Let's remove all these three, and our database is set to the MySQL, and the database is study inside the MySQL. Let's insert these values, of these columns, these classes inside our table. For that, we have to write the client code. Suppose create code, create, provide main method. Again, we have to write those connection getting of methods of configuration and building session factories. What we can do, we can copy and paste those things from here, from transaction to here. Delete it. Let's delete these things. Study, import to import. So you know what these methods do, what these lines of code is responsible to work for. So let's move on. Now we want to insert this customer inside our table, inside our database. So let's create address, but right here we have to provide the address. Okay, suppose customer cast new, for CNAME it is Raj, phone number is, suppose this is the phone number, and in address we have to provide address object. So let's create the address first in our code. Address add is equal to new, it is going to be Patna, pin code is this, and country is India. So we have to pass this object of address in our customer constructor in order to initialize this object, and then just run session.save, and in this customer, let's see, right here we have multiple tables inside our study database. Let's drop the database first. Drop database study. Let's create the database study, create, use. Right now you can see there is no table, empty set inside our study database. We are running this code in Java application. We got some error. Let's see what it is saying. So the error is in this fully qualified name, because right here package name is different. So let's rename this package to com.study. Continue. Right now package is com.study. Let's run the code again. I think it will work. No, we got another exception. It says, basically what it is saying, object reference as unsaved transient instance, which means that we didn't saved this address and we are trying to insert this address in our customer table. First this address have to be inserted into the address table. This address is not inside the address table right now because we didn't save it. That is why it is giving this error. So first save this session.save. Then we are passing this address from the corresponding table of address into the table of customer. So into the table of customer. So this is how it works. Inserted into the address and inserted into the customer. Let's see. Row table, we have address and customer table. Let's select star from customer, select star from address. So in, you can see right here In customer, there is my add column that we built right here. In customer, we have mentioned this column. This column is inside the customer table, and it is getting in relationship of foreign key with AID. AID is column inside the address table. So this my add column is in relationship with this AID column, which is in other table, which is address. So for second address, this customer is there, or you can say for this customer number 3, he have address, and address is inside this corresponding foreign key column, which is 2. So 2 is here. This is the address for this customer. So for this customer, what is the address of this customer? So 2. Why? Because it is inside the my address column, and my add is in relationship of foreign key with AID. So AID and my add is same 2, which means that this address belongs to this customer. Let's do some more examples. Suppose let's not give address right now. Let's delete this part. Let's create multiple customer first. So we have no constructor for that. Let's create the constructor without address first. So we can insert the some customer inside our table. Suppose Kumar. Pushpa. We have Mohan. So we are storing these customers in our table. Okay. I'm running this. So this customer will get inserted inside our table. Customer. So here we have multiple customers, and you can see in my add column these are nulls because we didn't provided the address for these customers. We didn't provided the address for these customers. Now let's now what we are going to do, we are going to insert some address in the address table. For that, address, suppose a1 is equal to new address. It is Ranchi, pin code IND India, session.save, and inserting this address inside our table. Let's create couple of more tables. Suppose America, there is some pin code, and NYC. So let's insert this address in our table. where these addresses are going to inserted inside our address table. So here is the address table. We got these addresses. So you can see right here that for customer 3 we have address. How we can understand that for this customer 3 Raj we have address? Because my add column and AID column matches right here 2 2. Both of these have 2 value. Why? Because my add and AID is in foreign key relationship. So that represent that this address on 2 primary key belongs to this customer 3, or you can say Raj. And for these customers there is no address. So suppose what we want here is we want to assign this address NYC to the Mohan, that Mohan belongs to this address. So for Mohan 6, which is at CID 6 means primary key 6, we want to insert his address. What we have to do? First we have to load this customer, load that customer. Let's comment this. We are loading the particular customer. So session dot load, or let's do this in different code. So we are creating, now what we are doing is we are updating. We have some customers, we have some addresses. Now we want to make the relationship between those customer and address. So session dot, we are loading Mohan CID is 6. So customer dot class, and the primary key for Mohan customer object we are going to get, and we also have to load this address, because we are not providing address from outside or not creating new address. We want Mohan to have the existing address, which is this is inside the table. So we have to load this table and pass to Mohan. So we have loaded Mohan, and let's load the address. So address is at primary key 8. So it is 8 and it belongs to address class, address class, address. Now we have address and customer. What we have to do? We have to use customers object and set address. So in set address, the address that we extracted from table using this line of code, we loaded this and store in this reference variable. We pass this address inside the customer dot set address. What is set address? It is the setter method inside the customer class. This can be also done through the constructor. When we are creating the customer, exactly at that time we can use the customer constructor where we can pass the address, but we didn't pass the address at the time of creating the customer. We used this constructor at that time. So now we are using setter method for setting this address. So we loaded our address and customer. Now we are inserting the existing address, which is this, to this customer Mohan. So what will happen in this case? 8 will get reflected right here inside Mohan. You can see the AID 8 have this address, and same address now belongs to Mohan at 6. So this is how you do update. So we know how to create. We first created our customer and address. Even at this time, we can pass the address right here, but we didn't did that. So now we are updating the customer with the particular address. So exactly like that, you can also delete customer and address. So suppose you want to delete this customer Raj 3. So you have to load this customer using this primary key 3. So let's delete that. Let's create delete code. Delete code. Inside delete code, suppose we want to delete this particular customer 3 Raj, and Raj have this address 2 Patna. So when we are going to delete this address, then by default, when we are going to delete this customer Raj, then by default his address, which is 2, have to be get deleted, because if there is no customer, what is going to be need for his address? Do that. Raj is at 3 primary. We loaded 3 and then session dot delete. We are running. Raj have to be get deleted from our database. Let's see. Delete from customer. So here is no Raj. You can see at third primary key, Raj got deleted. So is that his address is also got deleted, which is Patna? Let's see. No, address didn't got deleted. So this is wrong. When customer address got deleted, customer got deleted, his address must have to be got deleted. So how to configure this thing? This thing you have to mention at the time of one-to-one mapping. Mentioning one-to-one mapping, right here you have to mention cascade is equal to cascade type dot all. So what will happen with this? Remember, in database, whenever we are in database, if there is a master table, suppose customer is a master table right here, and this is the sub table. If we are deleting any record from the super table, or you can say master table, then first we have to delete that record from the sub table. But in here, in case of Hibernate, it didn't go in that way. We deleted the customer from the master table, then that master table got deleted, but the linked foreign key is still present in the sub table. So what have to be done is, when we delete from the master table, value from the sub table automatically have to be get deleted. So for that, when we use this cascade type all, when we are going to delete from the master, then the values from the sub table is also going to be get deleted. And why it is the customer is master and why address is the sub? Because here is the relationship of foreign key between this my add column and aid, so it become the master table and it become the sub table. Now let's delete. Now here this customer 6, which is Mohan, have the address which is 8. Now let's try to delete the Mohan. We have mentioned right here at customer this line cascade type all. Now if we want to delete the Mohan, which is at primary key, then what will happen is his address is also going to get deleted automatically. You can see right here there will be two delete statement, delete from customer and from address. So Mohan got deleted and the corresponding address, which is at 8, is also deleted. His address is also no more available right here. So this is how you do create operation, update operation and delete operation. And for reading, you can just use simple SOP statement to read. So this is basically what association mapping is in one-to-one relationship. But in one-to-one relationship, there is more things. There is unidirectional and bidirectional thing. What is unidirectional and bidirectional? Let's understand this. So right now we don't have any relationship between our customer table and address table because no customer have any address right now. So let's first bind the customer and address. So for customer, suppose 5, we are going to provide address 7. So let's load the customer 5 and address 7 and bind these things. So for customer 5 Pushpa, there is going to be address 7. Let's see. Yes, here 7 comes. So this address now belongs to Pushpa. So what I mean by the unidirectional is, when you try to read code, simply let's make a read code. Directional and bidirectional is basically how you access the objects of another entity. It's just way of accessing other object is, which means if it is unidirectional, so with the help of customer object can we access the address, and in bidirectional, if it is bidirectional, so with the help of customer object can we access the address, or with the help of address can we access the object of customer. So right now it is unidirectional, so we are trying to access the address from the customer. So for that, in our read code, unidirectional and bidirectional basically means accessing of the object. So from the customer 5, we loaded the customer and we want his address. So we are using get address method. getter and setter methods get address, and we are printing this address. So to print this address, first we have to insert toString method so address can be get displayed. Let's write toString method without CID, or okay, let's with CID, not address. Let's run this code. Yes, we can read the object of address is right here. To print it, let's write toString method. Let's try to print it. It is not coming in this way. Let's try another way. Can we access address from the customer object? So get address will give address. Yes, it is giving address, and then with the A, get AID. Get city. So this get city is inside the address class. Get country. Get pin code. So from the customer, we can access values of address. This is what unidirectional and bidirectional means. The accessing of the values of another entity represent the directionality in case of association mapping. If you are going to print this, here comes Ranchi, India and 770, which is pin code. So we loaded our customer 5 at 5. We have Pushpa, and with this customer object, we are also accessing his address. So unidirectional. With the customer object, we are accessing the address. But can we access the customer from the address? Let's see. Right now, we want to access addresses. We want to access customer from the address. We access address here, address from the customer object. Now we want to access customer from the address object. So let's first load some address. System dot load address dot class. What is the address? Suppose we are loading 7th address, and with this address we are trying to get the corresponding customer, which is Pushpa. What's going to happen? So at 7 primary key, address. Now with this address object, we want to get customer, but no, we cannot get the customer. Here with the customer object, we get the customer, and with customer object, we are getting the address with get address method. But here with address, we are not getting any get customer getter methods. So it's only unidirectional. We are able to access customer we are able to access address from the customer. But if we are trying to access customer from the address, then there is some problems, we are not able to do that. So what we have to do in order to make it bidirectional, when we can access only from the one directional, then it is unidirectional, and when we can access from both direction, then it is bidirectional. So how to make it bidirectional? What you have to do is, in address we have to mention the customer, like inside the customer, here you can see inside customer class we have mentioned address, here address. So inside address we have to mention, inside address we have to mention customer, private customer cust, and on top of this we have to mention one-to-one mapping, and in this mapping you have to mention mapped by address. So what this line of code is saying, this is saying that at customer it is inside the address class, and it is saying that at customer there is reference variable addr. So at customer class there is reference variable addr, at there the mapping strategy is defined. Just take that strategy from there. So again, what this line of code is saying, that at customer class there is reference variable for address class which is addr. From there just take the mapping strategy. So we don't have to provide these both lines right here in order to make it bidirectional. What we are going to do is, we are telling it that at customer class there is reference variable for address which is addr. Here is addr. So what Hibernate is going to do, Hibernate is going to take the mapping strategies that we have defined right here inside the customer. So if you are going to run this code again, from scratch, like we have to create table again, let's do that. So you can see what unidirectional and bidirectional mean. For that we have to drop this table, drop this database, create the database, use that database, and inside that database we have to insert this customer and address. Let's insert these addresses and customers in our table. So table, it got created. Select customer, address. There is no relationship between address, these customers, and this address. This address don't belong to any customer right now. Let's establish some relationship. Update. Suppose 5, not 5, because we don't have 5 right here. Suppose the customer 3, we are loading customer 3, Mohan, and we are loading suppose Ranchi. 4, address 4, and for the Mohan we are inserting this address. So 4 will get inserted right here. So now this address belongs to Mohan. What we have to saw right here is we can access. Let's do the previous code first. For particular customer, we are loading his address. For Mohan, suppose for Mohan 3, we want to see his address. So with the customer object, we are using getter and setter method. Here, if we run this, then for this customer, Mohan, his address will get printed in our console. But on the other side, if we want to extract the customer from the address, then from this address 7, here is no 7, so let's see 4. For address 4, we want to get the customer. For that, this address belongs to which customer. So we have loaded the address and now we are trying to get the customer. So right now here we don't have get customer method because we didn't mention that here. Right here we have to mention the getter and setter method for customer. Let's create the getter method for customer, and you can see here we have get customer. Get cust means get customer. It will get customer object, and with customer we can get the customer class name, CID, phone. So here this is how you can make these things bidirectional, means from both side you can access the other side of elements. Suppose phone, so we can print it in different line. So from customer you can get the address, and from address object you can get the customer. Here I am getting the customer. So this is how you create table in association mapping, in which we have seen one-to-one mapping, how you update these values, how you delete the values, and how you read the values from both sides in case of unidirection or bidirectional. If you are able to get the address from the customer side, then it is only unidirectional. But if you are also able to get the customer from the address side, then it is bidirectional, one-to-one bidirectional mapping. So for your better understanding, I created exactly same table on which we have worked in our code. So in customer table, we have CID, CNAME, phone. On customer side table, we have CID, CNAME, and phone. And in address side, we have AID, CID and pin code and country, in which CID is primary key. You can see here CID is our primary key ID, and in address we have AID as primary key, right here. And what we did to make between the customer and address table is we make one foreign key relationship between the customer and class. How we did that? Here in one-to-one mapping, we joined columns. We use join column annotation, and in that annotation we are making one column, new column, my add, my address. So we make my add in customer side table. In customer side table, here we are making new column, and we are referencing this column with AID. Where is AID? AID is inside the address. Here is the AID column. So we are making relationship with a foreign key constant between this new column, which is in customer table, between the AID column of address table. So what was happening when we are running the code? First, what we did, we created some customers, we inserted some customers, suppose 1, 2, and 3 customers, and then we inserted some addresses, like address 4 got inserted, address 5, address 6 got inserted. Then we are inserting the particular address inside our customer. What we are telling Hibernate is to provide this address, suppose 5 address, to the customer 1. So we are using customer object cust cust1. First we inserted the customer and address, and we are loading customer 1. Then with that object, you can see here update code. First, suppose we are loading some customer like 3. At 3 we loaded this customer, and with that object cust we are saving the address. First we are also loading the address. Suppose we are loading the address number 4. We loaded the customer, this third customer, and address, which is at 4 primary key. AID is primary key in the address table. So we loaded this customer 3 and address 4, and what we are doing is we are using the customer object to set this address. So we are calling setter method, and inside that setter method we are passing address. So what will happen, this address number 4 is going to be get inserted in the corresponding customer. So here we will get 4, because there is a relationship between my add column and the AID column, which is foreign key relationship. So this address will get added for this third customer. You can see what is happening. So this is one association mapping. And what is unidirectional and bidirectional? You know, if we are able to access only from one side, if we are accessing only from one side through customer, we can access address, then it is unidirectional. But if we are able to access from both the sides, we can access address from the customer and we can access the customer from the address object, then it is bidirectional. How to make bidirectional any class? We only have to tell that at customer in one-to-one mapping, if these lines are not there, mean it is unidirectional. But if we provide these lines, we provide customer variable, customer type variable in address, and we tell that it is mapped by address. So at customer class, address is mapped by this reference variable addr. So what addr? What Hibernate is going to do? Hibernate will go to the customer and it will go to the addr reference variable and take the mapping strategies from there. So it will by default from bidirectional. So I think you got the idea right now how one-to-one association mapping works. We make relationship between two tables with foreign key constant. So another topic is one-to-many association mapping. You only have to, what you have to do, you only have to remember the examples that I am doing right here in the codes. So in one-to-one case of association mapping, one customer can have only one address, and one address is going to belong to one customer. But what will happen in one-to-many association mapping? One customer can have multiple accounts, so it is one-to-many accounts. But what if we are going to see it from the other side? So from other side, from the account side, one account is always going to belong to one customer. So it is one-to-many. Why? Because one customer can have multiple accounts. So in next video, we will go through one-to-many and these diagrams, and also we are going to cover the code part of one-to-many association mapping next video. For today, we have gone through the concept of one-to-one association mapping, in which we have seen unidirectional and bidirectional, and this is the diagram that we have built in our database. So I think you got the clear idea for one-to-one association mapping. Stay tuned for the one-to-many association mapping in the next video, and just try to remember these examples that I am giving to you. So only by these examples you will get the clear idea of one-to-one association mapping or one-to-many association mapping, or maybe it is many-to-many association mapping. If you remember the example, then if you remember the example like customer to address and address to customer, then association mapping is nothing going to be hurdles in learning Hibernate for you. So stay tuned for next video, in which we are going to cover one-to-many association mapping, and also we are going to do codes for one-to-many association mapping.